All right, so for this tutorial, I'd like to show you how to draw all three of the doors that you see listed there. And I'll use the dimensions provided. What I'm going to do is begin with the first typical door, and that's the one over in the top left corner. It shows the door and it shows the door swing. And it's indicating that the door width is going to be 2 foot 6 inches. So I'm going to stick with that. And then the wall thickness, I'm indicating to use 5 inches for this example. And then later, as needed, we can change it. And I'm looking at the thickness of the door, and that is 1.5 inches. So I'll begin with that. From the new drop-down, I'll click on that. I'll select AutoCAD drawing template. If you do not see it listed there, click on Browse Template. Go over here, click on it one time, and then open. Next thing I want to do is format my units. So I type units and enter. And I'm going to change the unit type to architectural, set the precision to 1/32, the angle type decimal degrees, precision to the nearest 100th of a degree. That's all I need to change. And now I click OK. Next thing to do is save the file as and give it a file name. So come on up to the application button, click on it, hover down here where it shows save as, and then click on drawing. And from here, go to your folder where you are saving all of your drawing files. Go into the file name and save it using the correct file name that you're supposed to use. So following the instructions, let's go ahead and put in the file name. First initial, last name, and doors. I'll go ahead and click save. In my example, it indicates that I already have it. Do I want to replace it? And I'll go ahead and click yes to this. I am now ready to begin drawing that first door. And if you looked at the examples, there's 3 of them, and there's no indication anywhere as to where to begin. So in my example, what I'm going to do is actually pick that center point of the radius, and that's going to be my start point for the door. So I'll begin there, and that'll be 0, 0 for me. So coming back over here, I'm going to pan, and then I'm going to zoom out a little bit, maybe pan this down a little bit more. And then personal preference, I turn off my grid mode. And now I'll begin drawing the door. I'm going to start with a line. So I come over to the Home tab, Draw Panel, click on Line. And I need to specify the first point. And that first point is going to be 0, 0, and I enter. So I'm getting the rubber banding effect. I now want to turn ortho on because I need to draw some straight lines. So I will click down here on ortho, activate it. And I'll start by drawing the thickness of the door, which is 1.5 inches. So I'll simply type in 1.5. It's understood to be inches, and I enter. And now I take my line up, and I need to give it the door width. And according to the example I provided, it is 2 foot 6 inches. So that's what I'm going to type in, 2 feet 6. I don't need to type in the inches, it's understood. So now I enter, and the line is up above outside of my drawing area. So I'm going to pan down to see if I can center it, which I'm able to. And I'll continue to draw the line, take it straight out to the left. And this is going to be 1.5 inches. So I type in 1.5 and enter. And then to come back down here, I could type in 2 foot 6, but I look at the option I have at the command line, and it indicates that I can type C to close the lines. So I will type C and enter. And there's my door. To double check, you can come over here to the Home tab, Utilities panel, and Measure. and I'll just click on the drop down here to see all the different ways I can measure. And I'm just going to pick the first one, which is quick. And when I select that, you can see it's showing me the dimensions that it is 2 foot 6 inches. It is 1.5 inches. So everything looks good. So I'll tap the escape key and now I can continue. The next thing I'd like to do is to draw that door jamb, and it is 2 inches and 5 inches thick for the wall. So let me draw that in now. So I'm going to pan and zoom right here, and I'll begin to draw another line. So Home tab, draw panel, click on line. And I'm going to start by selecting this endpoint. And by the way, before I even click there, I want to come down here and just to show all of you my object snaps. I do have endpoint, midpoint, intersection selected or turned on, that is. These are my current running object snaps. So that's why I'm able to just go ahead and click and select that endpoint. So let me click on the down arrow again, makes it go away, and I will continue. First point is this endpoint here. I click one time, I bring my line down, and it's going to be 5 inches. So I type 5 and enter. And now I'm going to pan, and I will continue in this direction now and draw a line, and that will be 2 inches. So I'll type in 2 and enter. I'm going to enter again on my keyboard here, and that terminates the line command. But I also need to draw another line up here. So I will right click and repeat the line command, and I'll start at the endpoint here, take it over, type in 2 and enter. I'm done drawing lines, so I will enter again, and that terminates the command. So I'll zoom out for just a moment to show you what I've accomplished so far. And now I'm going to zoom back in here because I'd like to treat these 3 lines as one single entity, one single object. And right now, if I hover over them, I'm selecting each one, or I would be selecting each one individually. But there's another command I want to introduce, and that's the join command. And if I'm not mistaken, it might be in the modify panel. If I click down on that, and the join command is going to be one of these. I'm trying to figure out which one it is. There we go. So this one will join similar objects to form a single unbroken object. So I can click on this icon, and then I can select my objects. And I'd like to join these 3 lines. I've picked them, and now I enter. Now, if I hover over one of the lines, you'll see that all 3 are now highlighted. And what I've done is I have joined 3 lines, and I've constructed a polyline. So let me continue now to the next part of this. So I'm going to pan over here. Let's go back and look at that example of the door. And I need to have that width be 2 foot 6 inches. So let me show you a really quick and easy way to do this. I'm going to draw a temporary line, and I'm going to click on line and then start right here at this endpoint, give it a click, take it over a distance of 2 feet 6 and enter. And then I'll enter again to terminate the command. I'm only drawing the line so that I can have the accurate distance. And now the next thing I'd like to do is I'd like to take this polyline that I've drawn over here and have another polyline on the opposite side. And I'm going to use the mirror command here. So Home tab, modify panel, I click on mirror. I need to select the objects that I will mirror. So I select my polyline. And now I enter. And to specify the first point of the mirror line, I'm going to pick the midpoint of this line that I just drew. I'll give that a click. And then I'll take my mirror line down, or I can take it up. It's going to give me the same results. So now I'm going to click down here. I do not want to erase the source object, so I click no. And now I will simply come over here and from the Modify panel, click Erase, select the line, and enter. What's left for me to do now is draw that door swing. And that door swing is basically showing us which way the door opens. So to get the door swing in there, I need to draw an arc. And I know that arcs are constructed in a counterclockwise direction. Keeping that in mind, I will go up to the Home tab, Draw Panel. I'll click on the Arc dropdown. And I'm looking for the option that will give me a center point. And I also would like a start point and an end point. So this option here looks like it'll work. Center, start, end. So I'm going to click on that. And now the center point of the door is going to be right here at this endpoint. So I click on that one time. And now the start point, and let me turn ortho off for a moment in order for you to be able to see this well. Turned off ortho, and now I'm going to pick the start point, and it's going to be right here. I click on that, and then I will take my cursor up, and as you can see, it's drawing the arc, and it is going in that counterclockwise direction. And I'm going to continue until I get to this endpoint here, and that gives me a perfect 90-degree arc, and I click on that endpoint. And that door is now complete. Okay, so I'm going to pan over and zoom out, and the next set of doors that I'd like to draw are going to be the bifold doors. So if we take a look at that, typical bifold door, we're going to use an opening that is 4 feet wide. The bifold doors here are made up of the panels, and we have a total of 4 panels. And each panel then is going to be the length of the opening divided by the number of panels. So 4 feet divided by 4 panels, that means each panel is going to be 12 inches long. It's still going to be 1.5 inches door thickness. So I'm going to go back to my drawing, and I'm going to begin to draw my lines. But if you notice, they're at a 45-degree angle. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to go down to my drawing aids and click on this icon. This one is for polar tracking. So if I click on that, it's going to turn on polar tracking. And then if I click on the drop down next to it, I already have mine set to 45-degree increments. And that's going to work just fine for me. So now I'll click away from that window, and I'll come over here, and I would like to draw the bifold doors in this location roughly. So I'll begin, Home tab, Draw Panel, click on Line, and I will select a point right here. I'm going to give it one click. And now notice, because I have polar tracking on, it's going to snap to every 45-degree increment. And I'd like to bring this line down and keep it at a 45 here. And that length is going to be 12 inches. So I'm going to type in 12 and enter. And now I'd like to draw another line in this direction. I also want that to be 12 inches in length. So I can type in 12 again, or if you'd like, you can type in 1 foot. It's the same thing, 12 inches equals a foot. So 1 foot it is, and I enter. And now what I'd like to do is draw the thickness of the door here, and that's going to be 1.5 inches. So I type 1.5 and enter. And now I could come straight down this way, but I'm going to pause for just a moment. I'm going to right-click, enter to terminate the command. I'm going to zoom in here. I have the 2 lines that I need. Let me draw one more line. So back to my line command, I'll draw a line here at that 45-degree angle. It's perpendicular to the longer line there, and this is going to be 1.5 inches. So I type in 1.5 and enter, and I enter again to terminate the command. And now the next thing I will do is offset. So home tab, modify panel, offset. The distance here is going to be 1.5. Enter, and that's 1.5 inches. I select this line, offset it down towards the lower left. I click. I now take this line, click on it, offset it over to the lower right, and click. I'm done offsetting, so I'm going to right click, enter. That'll terminate the command. The next thing I'm going to do is fillet the corners here. So I'm going to head over to the home tab, modify panel, fillet. Now click on that. And I'm looking at my command line. It's already showing me a radius of 0 inches. So I'm good there. All I have to do now is select the lines. So here I go. I'm going to select this one first, and then this one here. And I should have done multiple, and that's all right. I can right click and repeat fillet. And now I can fillet this line and this one. So that takes care of the 2 panels here to the one side. But before I continue, if I hover over them, you'll see that they are individual line segments. What I'd like to do is join them so they are one single polyline. I could go up to my modify panel, but I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut, which is also called Command Alias, and I'm going to type J and enter. And now I'm prompted to select the source object. I'm going to window all of the lines here. And a window is always going from left to right. So it doesn't matter if I go from lower left to upper right or upper left to lower right. As long as I click somewhere in an open space here and then take my cursor over towards the right, I will get the blue shaded window. And I also have the solid outline, which means that anything that is 100% inside will be selected. So I go ahead and click. And now I can right click because I don't need to select any more objects. And I have now taken those 6 objects and converted them to one polyline. That's what the command line is indicating. Now, if I hover over my polyline, you'll see there it is. So with that done, I'm going to go back to the example for just a moment. And we are using an opening that's 4 feet in length. So here I go. I'm going to draw another line. Let me go back to my drawing here. I'm going to pan over this way. I'm going to draw the line, like I said, using my Command Alias keyboard shortcut, type L and enter. I'll start the line from this endpoint, take it straight across. And notice I'm using polar tracking. The angle is 0 degrees, so it's giving me a perfectly straight line. And I'm going to type in 4 feet, and then I will enter. I will enter again to terminate the command. And now I simply make a copy of this polyline. Once I select it, I will enter. I select this endpoint here, and I take it straight across to that endpoint. I right click, enter to terminate the command, and I have my bifold door. I can now take this line, and instead of going up and selecting the erase icon, I'm simply going to select it. I see the grips, and I will simply tap the delete key on my keyboard, and it's gone. What I will do now is draw the sliding doors. And the overall opening is 6 feet. The doors are 1.5 inches thick. And you could see that the trim around, or rather not the trim, the frame around the doors is 3 inches. So don't try to draw this out exact. it's helpful if you give yourself some extra lines and then erase them as needed. And that's what's going to happen with me here. I'm going to begin with one line that is 6 feet in length and take it from there. Back to my drawing, I'll pan down over here, draw my line. So I'll type L and enter. Specify the first point. Anywhere down here is fine. I click one time. I'm using my polar tracking. I'll go over this way, type in 6 feet and enter. And then I'll enter again to terminate the command. And now from here, I know that I have my sliding doors 1.5 inches going up and going down. So I'm going to offset, and I'll use my keyboard shortcuts. I'll type O for offset and then enter. The distance, it's remembering the previous offset distance, which was 1.5 inches. So I'm going to keep that. I'll simply enter. And then I'm going to offset the line. I'm going to click on it, offset it up, and then select it again and offset it down. And then right click, enter to terminate the command. And looking at my example, it indicates that it's going to be half the opening dimension, which is 3 feet for my example there. And that's the next step that I'm going to take, which is to draw a line straight down the middle, which will be at that 3-foot distance. From here, I will right click. I'm going to look at my recent inputs and I'm going to select line. From here, I'll draw a line from the midpoint to the midpoint of one line to midpoint of the other line. Right click, enter to terminate the command. And now I'm going to zoom in just so I can focus on this part of the drawing. And now from here, looking at my dimensions, I can see that I need to offset 1.5 inches in either direction. So let me do that now. I'll type O for offset and enter. Still keeping that 1.5 inches, so I enter. Selecting this line, offset it over to the right. Select the line again, offset it over to the left, and I'm going to pick way out here. Click here, and I have the lines that I need. Now, right now I still have more information than what's needed, but it's good because I'll come back and edit this. So I'm now going to enter to terminate the command. And then if I go back and look at my example, I'm getting there. I need to put in the frame on the other two sides, on the two ends. So I'll come back to my drawing and I'm going to draw a line. So let me right click and go to recent input and select line. And I'm going to draw a line from here down to this endpoint. Right click, enter to terminate that command. And then right click and repeat line. And I'll draw a line here to there. Right click, enter to terminate the command. Next, I'm going to offset. So I'm going to type O and enter. The offset distance this time is 3 inches. So I type 3 and enter. I select this line, offset it over to the right. So I can click down here. I want to continue offsetting lines. This time I want to come over here to the right, select this line and offset it to the left. So I'll click. I'm done offsetting, so I can right click, enter, and that will terminate the command. Now I need to draw the lines that represent the glass. So I will right click, go over to my recent input and select line. And I'll draw a line from this midpoint here straight across, and I'll let it find that intersection and I'll click. And now I right click enter to terminate that command. And now I continue. I'll right click, repeat line, select this midpoint here, take it straight across and let it find that intersection, which it does, and I click. And now I right click, enter to terminate the command. And from this point, I now modify and begin to erase and trim as needed. So I look at my drawing and I select this line right here. I realize that I don't need that one anymore. So I simply tap the delete key on my keyboard. And now I have to trim some lines. I'm going to go back a little bit, and I had talked about grips before. I know I said I'm going to trim, but before I do that, let me just quickly show you that I can actually select the line. It shows me the grips. I can select this endpoint here and then bring it over to this endpoint. Same up with the line above here. I can select that line. I can click on this grip point, bring it over, and select that endpoint. So I could use grips, but let me undo that and show you what I had said at the beginning, which is to trim it. So I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut TR for trim and enter. And I simply trim this segment, and then I trim this segment. And then I right click enter to terminate the command, and I zoom out, and I have my 3 typical doors. So to print this out, I'll go to my application button, click on it, come down here, hover over print, and then come up here and click on plot. From this window, the printer that I'm going to select is going to be the AutoCAD PDF General Documentation printer. My sheet size will stay at 8.5 by 11. I would like to plot the extents of my drawing. I'm going to center my drawing. I'm going to turn off fit to paper so that I can come down here in the scale drop down and select an architectural scale. I'll start with 1/2 inch and see if that scale allows me to fit my 3 doors onto a sheet. And if I look at the preview, looks like it will. So if I wanted to, I can increase that scale. So I'm going to try a different scale so that it prints bigger. So I'll go to 3/4 of an inch. And that looks like it should fit on there nicely, but I can always try the next scale up, which is inch equals a foot, and that too will fit. But I think for now, we'll stay with the 3/4 inch equals a foot. And then my drawing orientation, I can check and see if portrait might be better. And all I'm doing is just looking at the preview, but I think I'll leave it at landscape. You can see up here how everything looks like it'll fit just right on there. So the next thing I'll do is come over here to preview to see what this will look like. This note here, ignore it for now because we're not using annotation scale yet. We will eventually. So go ahead and just click on continue. And this is showing me on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, my 3 doors printed at the scale that I selected. And this looks fine. If I wanted to, I can go ahead and come up here to the icons and select print, but I don't want to do that just yet. I'm going to close it first because these settings are going to work for me. And what I'd like to do is apply these settings to layout. And I'll click on that button. And what this means is the next time I come in to print this file, all of the settings will be saved. So now that I've done that, I can go ahead and click OK. Again, this annotation scale note comes up. Go ahead and just click continue. From here, select the appropriate folder and make sure that you remove the word model from the name. The reason it's placing model in there is because of the model space, or rather the model tab that you see open over in the lower left-hand corner. We'll talk about model and the layout 1 and layout 2 later on. I simply just highlight the name and then backspace so that it's just the name of my drawing file. And then I'll go ahead and click on save. My plot has been completed. I can now see what it looks like. And here it is. And I'll collapse this window here. There's the drawing. If I hover, take my cursor over and hover it towards the lower left corner, you can see it's showing me 11 by 8.5. So the sheet size is correct. And my drawing is printed, the PDF version of it. And then, of course, share it as required.